Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off today's presentation with a focus on effective communication. The title of today's talk is A Comprehensive Guide to Understanding and Overcoming Obstacles in Professional Communication. We'll be exploring how to identify communication barriers, and more importantly, how to navigate and overcome them. So, over the next few minutes, I'll share practical insights and strategies to improve your professional interactions. Let's get started. Let's take a closer look at the different types of communication barriers. First, we have the physical barriers, which include things like noise, distance, or environmental factors that make it hard to hear or see the message clearly. Then, there are cross-cultural barriers, which happen when cultural differences lead to misunderstandings or misinterpretations of messages. Next, we consider individual and psychological barriers. These involve personal biases, emotions, or mental states that can distort how we receive or interpret information. Interpersonal barriers refer to issues in the way people interact, such as misunderstandings or lack of trust. Organizational barriers are related to the structure or hierarchy within a company that can hinder open and effective communication. And finally, semantic barriers occur when words or symbols have different meanings for different people, leading to confusion. Overall, communication barriers are anything that prevents us from effectively receiving and understanding messages. Recognizing these 6 critical types helps us identify where obstacles might exist and work towards improving our communication. This understanding is essential for ensuring our messages are conveyed clearly and accurately in any setting. When it comes to communication, semantic and language barriers can really create misunderstandings. Faulty translations are a common issue. Often, when translating idioms or culturally specific phrases, the nuance gets lost, and the meaning can be completely misunderstood. Then there are language differences like dialects and accents. These can make it hard for people to understand each other, especially when there's no shared language or common ground. Technical jargon is another big hurdle. Professionals in fields like IT or medicine often use specialized language that can be confusing for people outside those industries. It's important to recognize that this kind of language can create a disconnect. And finally, ambiguity can really cause problems. Words with multiple meanings, like value or light, can lead to incorrect interpretations if the context isn't clear. All of these factors highlight how crucial clear, precise communication is, especially when working across different languages and cultures. It ties into our overall theme of overcoming barriers to ensure effective understanding in a global environment. Let's talk about some of the organizational barriers that can hinder effective communication. First, overcomplicated regulations and inflexible communication channels can really stifle open dialogue and feedback. When rules get too rigid, it becomes difficult for employees to share ideas or concerns freely. Next, we have the issue of rules and policies leading to excess emails, reports, and meetings. This flood of information can make it hard for employees to prioritize what's truly critical and process it efficiently. It's easy to get overwhelmed and miss important details. Finally, strict chains of command can also slow things down. When messages have to pass through multiple levels, they can get delayed or even distorted along the way. This rigid hierarchy often prevents quick, clear communication, which is essential for agility and responsiveness. All these barriers connect to our overall theme of improving organizational communication. By recognizing and addressing them, we can foster a more open and efficient environment. Now, let's talk about some common interpersonal barriers that can really hinder effective communication. First up is ego and status. When personal attitudes and a desire to maintain a sense of superiority come into play, it can block open and honest exchange. People might hold back or become defensive because they feel the need to appear more important or in control. Next, poor listening skills are a big obstacle. If we're just listening to reply, instead of truly understanding the other person, it prevents genuine connection and empathy from developing. When we listen with the intention to respond rather than to understand, we miss out on key messages and feelings being shared. And finally, lack of trust. When trust isn't there, messages tend to be viewed with skepticism. Instead of accepting what's being said at face value, people become defensive or dismissive. This skepticism creates a barrier that makes honest, open dialogue nearly impossible. Connecting all of this to our overall goal, effective communication, it's clear that these interpersonal barriers can really stand in our way. Recognizing and addressing them is essential for building stronger, more authentic relationships. Let's talk about some individual and psychological barriers that can affect our communication. First, mental fatigue or a lack of interest can really cause our minds to wander. When we're tired or not engaged, we tend to miss important parts of the conversation, which can lead to misunderstandings. Next, there's inattention. This often happens when we have preconceived notions about someone's background or identity. These biases can cause us to listen selectively or jump to stereotypes, rather than truly hearing what the other person is saying. Then we have prejudice and bias. Strong emotions like anger, fear, or sadness can cloud our judgment. When we're in these emotional states, neutral messages might be misinterpreted as attacks, which can escalate conflicts unnecessarily. Finally, our emotional state overall plays a huge role. How we're feeling at any given moment, whether we're anxious, upset, or stressed, can influence how we interpret messages and respond. Understanding these barriers helps us see how internal factors can impact our ability to communicate effectively and empathetically, which is a key part of improving our overall communication skills. Now, let's look at some of the cross-cultural barriers that can affect global teams. First, we have values and norms. Differences in how people perceive time, like punctuality, and how they show respect for hierarchy, can sometimes cause friction. For example, in some cultures, being on time is crucial, while in others, there's a more relaxed attitude. Likewise, respecting authority or seniority might be interpreted differently across cultures. Next, nonverbal cues play a big role. Gestures, eye contact, personal space, they all vary wildly from culture to culture. Take eye contact, for instance. In Western cultures, making direct eye contact is seen as respectful and confident, but in some Asian cultures, it might be viewed as aggressive or confrontational. These differences can lead to misunderstandings if we're not aware of them. Finally, there's the issue of ethnocentrism, believing that your own culture is superior. This mindset can be quite problematic because it might cause us to dismiss or overlook valuable perspectives from other cultures. Recognizing and overcoming ethnocentrism is key to fostering mutual respect and effective collaboration in diverse teams. So, understanding these barriers, values and norms, nonverbal cues, and ethnocentrism is essential for working successfully across cultures and building truly global teams. When we look at physical and technological barriers in the workplace, several key issues stand out. First, workplace architecture can really impact collaboration. Closed doors, separate floors, or physical partitions create silos that make spontaneous conversations much harder, which can hinder innovation and teamwork. Then there's faulty equipment. Imagine trying to work with poor Wi-Fi, broken microphones, or glitchy software. These issues can cause immediate breakdowns in communication and productivity. They often lead to frustration and delays, disrupting the flow of work. Distance and time zones also play a big role, especially with remote teams. When colleagues are spread across different regions, feedback loops get delayed, and the nuances of face-to-face interaction are lost. This can lead to misunderstandings or a feeling of disconnection. Lastly, environmental noise is a common obstacle. Traffic, construction, or just open office chatter can be very distracting. It makes focusing difficult and reduces overall efficiency. All these barriers connect back to our main theme. Effective communication and collaboration are essential, but they're often challenged by physical and technological hurdles that we need to address. Let's take a closer look at the impact of barriers in the workplace. Research shows that more than half of all communication breakdowns are due to psychological and organizational factors. This highlights how crucial emotional intelligence is in overcoming these barriers. When we understand and manage our own emotions, as well as recognize those of others, we can improve our interactions significantly. Additionally, structural reform within organizations plays a vital role. By creating clearer communication channels and fostering a culture of openness, we can reduce misunderstandings and build stronger connections. Overall, addressing both emotional and structural barriers is essential for enhancing communication. This aligns with our broader goal of creating more effective, collaborative work environments. When we prioritize emotional intelligence and organizational change, we pave the way for more productive and harmonious workplaces. Let's talk about some key strategies to overcome barriers in communication. First, it's really important to recognize our own personal biases and manage our emotions. Doing so helps us stay open and objective, which is essential for meaningful dialogue. When we approach conversations without preconceived notions or emotional reactions, we're more likely to understand and be understood. Next, we should avoid using jargon or ambiguous language. Instead, aim for simple, clear, and direct words that are tailored to your audience. This reduces confusion and keeps the conversation accessible for everyone involved. Another crucial point is establishing regular feedback loops. Creating opportunities for two-way communication allows us to catch misunderstandings early on, before they become bigger issues. Check in often, ask questions, and encourage others to share their thoughts. Finally, when engaging in a conversation, focus fully on the speaker. Acknowledge what they're saying, clarify any points that aren't clear, and only then respond. This attentive approach helps ensure that everyone feels heard and understood, making the dialogue more effective and collaborative. All of these strategies tie back to our overall goal: fostering open, honest, and constructive communication, even when barriers might arise. Let's take a moment to reflect on a quote by George Bernard Shaw that really hits the mark when it comes to communication. He said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." What does that mean? Well, often, we assume that because we've spoken or sent a message, the other person has understood exactly what we intended. But in reality, that's not always the case. This quote highlights a common pitfall: thinking that communication is complete once we've spoken or written something. The key point here is that effective communication requires more than just transmitting information. It requires confirmation that the message was received and understood as intended. When we overlook this, we create an illusion that the message has been successfully communicated, when in fact, it hasn't. That can lead to misunderstandings, mistakes, or even conflicts. Connecting this idea to our overall theme, improving our communication skills, it's clear that active listening, asking clarifying questions, and checking for understanding are essential steps. They help break down the illusion, ensuring that what we say really lands with our audience or colleagues. So remember, in communication, never assume, always verify. That's how we turn a simple exchange into real understanding. Prepared by Vinod Goswami. That's me. If you have any questions or want to connect further, you can reach me at goswamiv505@gmail.com or call me at +91 8,755,072,430. Thank you so much for your time and attention today. I really appreciate your interest and engagement. And with that, I'll conclude the presentation. Thanks again and have a great day.